And that's something I learned from Willy and Lut. They really taught me everything that's there is welcome. So the wish to die, the wish not to live anymore, is welcome. But also the wish that you stay alive, that your daughter stays alive, for instance, is also welcome. So everything can exist, and we create the right for every feeling and every view to be evenwaardig.
Yeah, at the same level.
Yes. And sometimes we really ask as families, sometimes we really ask at the child, may your parent feel like I want you to stay alive. And we ask the parent, may your child feel like I don't want to live anymore. And that's really important, that it can exist next to each other.
Yes. Without facilitating the deed or without facilitating any outcome or... So there's always... That's why it's an open heart circle.
Yes.
Okay, it's a heart circle because you speak from the heart. But it's open because the outcome is open.
Yes.
This is the podcast to restore your faith in humanity. Once giraffe heroes, we now call our participants guardians of humanity. Courageous, tireless workers for the common good. May each of them inspire you to follow in their tracks and contribute your own part to a just society and a healthy environment. My name is Dimi Dumortier. I'm your host on another episode of the podcast To Restore Your Faith in Humanity. And with us today is Siska Baart. And she will talk about the open heart circles that were initiated by Guardians of Humanity, Willy Vandamme and Lut Wouters, two people from Belgium, who unfortunately did not feel so well at ease to speak in English. And that is why we have Siska Baart here with us today. But before engaging in a dialogue with Siska, I propose we listen to a fragment of an interview with Willy and Lut, and that I have dubbed in English. Listen to Willy and Lut and the dilemma they had to face with their daughter Lieve.
Ja, Lieve stelde de vraag van wat kan ik hier doen? Wat is...
So Lieve asked herself the question, what can I do in this life? What is the reason that I am here? She was so unhappy. She had spent years in psychiatric hospitals. Nobody seemed to be able to help her. No medication could cure her. And then she asked me, Daddy, can you give me your consent that I step out of this life? She also asked this to my wife. As father, I said, but Lieve, there is no way that I can give you this permission. For me, it's impossible to tell you, go ahead with this plan. For about 2 days, I only wept. I was completely shattered and I almost couldn't speak anymore.
Pas een jaar later, dus zij bleef met die vraag zitten. Dus dat...
But the question remained and she kept on asking. And a year passed by and she asked it again after having left once more the hospital. And then I told her, Lieve, if there is really no other way for you, because she had asked for euthanasia, but that had been dismissed. So I said, if there is really no other way, do it. But please let it not be us who find you on the street. And then 14 days later, she did it. And the fact that she was granted permission, I think, made her find the courage to do it. And I don't have regrets.
Hebben wij eigenlijk, zowel wij als de kinderen, hebben dat ervaren dat...
And it may sound strange to say this or to hear this, and this is not only true for us but also for our other children, that it felt as if we gave her the freedom to jump towards freedom. The fact that we were able to talk about this issue bit by bit over time, this very existential question, a question that aroused a lot of angst, fear. But the fact that we went through this process allows us to look back without anger it feels as though she's still here. We still carry her here in our heart. And this allows me to be able to talk about this and to act accordingly, to commit ourselves. And of course, this wasn't easy at all. I mean, some of these moments were really full of suspense. But underneath that suspense, there was this longing, this loving. We love you. We embrace you. And this is exactly what we try to do with the open heart circles. Whatever happens, don't go out of the way. Embrace it. Family members, talk openly. Please don't run away from the fears and the difficulties. And it's this experience that helps us to do what we still do today, the open heart circles.
En dat is ook wat we met de open hartcirkels proberen te doen.
What we just heard was a fragment of an interview of giraffe heroes Willy and Lut, two fantastic humans, two guardians of humanity, two people whom I've nominated myself because I know and admire them. They initiated the open heart circles, which are a kind of open dialogue sessions that I myself facilitate with families. And since I cannot interview myself, I welcome my colleague Siska Baart. Now, Siska, let's agree that this situation is kind of awkward since we have never talked English with one another. And why is that?
Oh, why is that? I really don't know what to say.
That is because we are colleagues and we use Dutch in the practice of open heart circles. You and I, we just watched the video that I recorded several years ago of Willy and Lut, who told me about their daughter Lieve, who passed away. She stepped out of life. Mm-hmm. And Willy says that for him, it took them 2 years of bewilderment and not knowing what to do with it or what to say or how to talk about it even. But then they gave an interview, and that interview was the start of what he calls the open heart circles.
Yes. I must say it really sounds beautiful in English. Open heart circles. I have never thought about it, how we would say it in English. But it sounds nice. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit about your practice with open heart circles? How did you come to know it and how you practice it?
Yeah. I want to begin to tell that Willy contacted me 5 years ago or something like that to ask me whether I wanted to participate in the open heart circles. And then I was really touched by the story of him and Lut. And I was also touched by all the reactions that they did get and by the project that they made really from out of their own pain to make such a beautiful project. So I really wanted to be part of it.
And at that moment, did they already do open heart circles with people?
Yes, they were already started with open heart circles, and they were looking for partners to expand it and to try to do it more in institutions for youth care in Belgium, for instance. And they were looking for partners who wanted to build it up in the community.
And of course you said yes, otherwise you wouldn't be here. But just for the listeners of our podcast, Siska, can you please explain what exactly are open heart circles?
Yes, I will try.
I will, of course, because I also do open heart circles.
Yes, so we'll explain it together.
Yes, we'll explain it together.
By the way, we could say also that every open heart circle we facilitate with 2 persons. So that makes it
obvious that we also
do this. Voila, thank you, with the 2 of us here. And if we were really here doing an open heart circle, then we would have 2 different roles. Then one of us would be the one who would generate the dialogue, who would ask the questions, who would structure the dialogue between the family members. And the other one would be kind of, we call it a mirror, but a mirror who can feel and speak. And that person would feel what happens to him during the talk and would give some language to the emotions that he feels.
This person would catch atmosphere, would catch energy, would try to be sensitive for non-visible energies.
Yes,
And
that's right. You said it beautifully. That's it. Yeah. And he would try to give a language to emotions that are not getting language from themselves, that stay underwater, but are really to feel in the room.
Yes.
Yeah.
And one is facilitating the dialogue, is keeping an eye on the flow of the conversation. The other would catch the energy and mirror some of the unspoken things to the family members. And why are these people together? So what brings them to ask an open heart circle?
What happens is that one person in the family, a person who is really touched by something that is happening in the family, and that person could ask for an open heart circle to do it with his family, with the family. And then that person would call us and would explain why an open heart circle would be a good idea. And it usually goes about really themes like emotional vulnerability, you say it like that?
Yes, I think so. About things that are hard to talk about and that they feel that they would need help to be able to tell things to each other, to find new words and maybe even to find wings for the story to finally fly away. I don't know because we are talking about a young person's vulnerability. Mm-hmm. Since most of the open heart circles, we do this for people between 12 and 25.
That's right, that's how we do it in youth care. But when you look at it, you can do it for age, doesn't matter. It can be happening in every family where there is a person who, where there are difficulties, where there is grief, where there is pain, and the family wants to talk about it. And they feel that they cannot talk openly about it on their own, and they want somebody to help to make room. Because what we do in the circle is we create a space, a safe space to give voice, to let every voice be heard, something like that. And the only job that we have to do is to create that room. And that's why the circle is also very structured with certain kind of rules. For instance, like the person who leads the circle is the one who will give everyone the word to talk. You cannot onderbreken, interrupt each other. Yes.
Well, when 6 years ago I was led to the open heart circles, that was one of the things that touched me most, was this unorthodox approach to a dialogue. Of course, I have a history in youth care, and when we had a conversation with family members, we would often be onlookers and we would just let it happen and only intervene when things really got out of hand. With open heart circles, it's not like that. Actually, what I found so amazing, surprising and appealing was the fact that you already start with a ritual. I mean, we, the two facilitators, we invite the people into the room with their grief and their angst and their spanning, how do you say this, tension? Mm-hmm. But we, the facilitators, we have prepared the room in such a way that these people are welcomed with coffee and cookies and candles. Yes. But the candles, for me, are part of the ritual. I don't know how you do it, but I ask every family member to light one candle. Yes. And we do that in silence. Yeah. But exactly that creates something, isn't it?
It's a very nice ritual. The importance of the ritual is to make the transition from the daily life and all the rush we're in daily to another way of being together, another way of talking. Because that's often what people say afterwards, after they have lived an open heart circle. They tell us, we thought we were talking a lot at our place, at our home, in our family. But now we know that we didn't talk in a way that we have learned here in this kind of setting, in this kind of atmosphere. And that's why the ritual marks something, like we get together in something else than the ordinary way of talking to each other.
Yes,
That's the importance of the ritual, I think.
Yeah. And I know that Willy and Lut, they ask the people to take off their shoes.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, they can leave them on because not everybody is prepared to show his socks.
Well, I would say in the beginning I found it really a bit an odd ritual, but I like it because it gives something. Sometimes it gives like that, laughing. Somebody starts to laugh because, oh my God, my sock today is this or that. Yeah. But it also gives things like people that go and sit in the sofa and they just put their feet up, and that gives something cozy at home.
So we have the ritual that opens up another way of speaking, but about what are they speaking? What is the topic on which we facilitate?
Yes, it's interesting that you say that, because we always have kind of the elephant in the room, as we say it. Often people, then they come. First we had a contact by phone, and on the phone they told us something about what's happening in the family. But then when we are sitting there together, often it's very difficult and the tension is high and people have difficulties to express why they are sitting there together.
Yeah.
For instance, when you have a family and a child in the family has tried to step out of life, then it's very difficult when the family is in the room. It can be very difficult for the people to talk about that, to say those words. And then we really try to invite them to tell the words, because we know when we try and when we find the courage to talk about the very difficult things that live inside us, then it gives such a release. Relief,
I think, yes. What I always I try to bring people to find words, very clear words for their grief, without, in Flemish we say rond de pot draaien, without turning around the pot, without avoiding the difficulty of the topic.
That's very important, and so often you will recognize this when I say it. When the words are finally said, then you feel something happening in the room. Often it gets really quiet for some time because everybody feels that's it. That's the importance of why we're here. And then you know, yes, it is said, and then you can go on and talk about all the fear and all the emotions that it brings. We start the circle with a question, with a starting question, and we ask everybody, with what feeling are you sitting here? How do you feel on this moment? And what do you hope that will happen in this circle? And that's a question that we start with. As you know, we do the tour. And then the next step is we ask the person that called us to tell why we are together. And when the person doesn't say it immediately, then we try to help. And then we say, for instance, okay, and when we talked on the phone last week, you also told me something else. May I ask you to talk about that? And so we try to invite them to tell it themselves. And maybe if somebody really cannot say it, then we would ask permission, like, can I say what you told me on the phone?
Yeah. Now, maybe it's good for the people of our podcast to realize that, okay, even though you and I, we work in youth care and we work for organizations that pay us to do the open heart circles, Willy and Lut, who originated all this, they are doing this for free. They never asked money for all the work, and they done it for years. They invited so many families to their home.
And they're still doing it.
They still do. How old are they now?
I hope I don't make mistakes now. But in the 70s, in their 70s, yeah.
They are both pensioned. Mm-hmm. I know both have their health issues, and it's not always easy to make time and to find the energy, but they still do it, and they never asked money for it. Huh?
Yes, they really do it from the heart.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, what I know is that they also didn't completely invent this way of talking. They were inspired by the open dialogue of Alan Sekula in Finland, I think.
Yes. When you look at open dialogue, for instance, and the open heart circles, there are very much, how do you say it, overeenkomsten?
Similarities.
Very much similarities, yeah. But I think a big difference is that the language we use, for instance, in open heart circles, we use the language of love, we say. We use the word love, we use rituals, like you say, we use spirituality. Wow, that's a difficult word in English.
Yeah, but the language of love,
Yes.
it's very, because in English, when we have a conversation with decent people, we don't say fuck, we say the F word. I find that in a lot of professional conversations, love has become a taboo word, and it's almost like people say the L word, you know.
Oh, yes.
Because, people are so afraid to involve themselves. And I'm asking you, do you also feel like I do, that when people are talking on that level, that you start feeling love inside of you?
As a facilitator, you mean?
I mean, when these people are talking like that, I love these people. I get goosebumps as I'm talking.
I really recognize what you say. It's amazing how you meet people, you see them for the first time, you never know them, they're completely strangers for you. And this happens, what you say, the love comes into the circle and it comes into your heart also. And when they leave after an hour and a half, 2 hours, when they leave, you really love those people. That's amazing what happens.
Yes.
It's because we all open our hearts, I think, because it's very important when you are a facilitator, you said it in the beginning of this conversation, we also participate. We also are sitting there as human beings, and we also tell what happens to us.
I never elaborate into that, but to be a good facilitator, you must have felt the pain somewhere in your life. And you must be able and willing to lift a tip of the veil of your own pain, that people feel like, this person's different. This person is not the professional playing the empathic person. This is empathy.
Yes. And it's right. And you don't have to use many words. You don't have to talk a lot to do that. It's in the energy, like you say. It's in what you bring over in the room, in the energy. Because I think in an open heart circle, for us as facilitators, how do you say, uitdaging?
The challenge.
The challenge, yeah. Because we're all so used to talk and use beautiful words. But I think that our challenge is to be aware of what we should not do instead of what we should do.
Yes. And we should not cure. Because a lot of the professional help that is being proposed to people is, we are going to cure you. Have you ever promised to cure people?
No. I think we always say, sometimes people hope that you will do that, but we always say, we don't have any cure. We can only stand next to you and think together and search together.
Yes.
In this situation.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's what we should not do, you're right. We should not cure, we should not seek for solutions, try to solve things. But then because when we do that, we don't see what's happening right in front. And that's something I also learned by doing the open heart circles, is having trust. I always call it having trust in the circle. What needs to come will come. And it's not your responsibility to make sure that it comes, because it will come. One of the people that's in the room will take care of the. I don't find. Do you know what I mean when I say to trust the circle? I don't find a better explanation.
Yes. Sometimes I feel it like they transcend the roles of parents and child. They become. They stand on each other's level. Like the child could be the parent, and the parent could be the child.
Yes.
Now, you know, Siska, this podcast is called the Podcast to Restore Your Faith in Humanity. And one of the things that I believe that Willy and Lut have taught us is that it takes a lot of courage from these people to come to us with all the pain that is involved
Yes.
concerning the psychic suffering of their loved ones, of their child, their partner, their brother, their sister. But this courage, it's not only words, because they express their love for one another, but we also hope that they step into the action, that they take the courage home and take responsibility for each other. For my part, I always express that they can come back as many times as they want, which nowadays in social welfare is a rather foolish thing to say, because everybody knows that there are huge waiting lists, that is very, very hard to find the right help for your suffering kid, for your suffering child. And there are almost no organizations that say, oh, well, come back as many times as you want. But we do it. We do it, and that is action.
Yes.
And that is courage. And I believe that is what Willy and Lut have taught us.
Yes, I'm glad that you talk about the acts. Indeed, it's very important. And also when we let people express their grief and their emotions, and when we let people listen to their own emotions and to the emotions of the other people in the room, at that moment they go through their pain together. Going through the pain makes that you can feel the love together. You get touched by what the other person says, and when you get touched, it's like Levinas, the face of the other person. When you get touched, then your responsibility is also touched, and you're prepared to take responsibility
For each other.
for each other. Yes, and that's why at the end of an open heart circle, for instance, we often ask also, what action do you want to take? When you look at the next days or weeks, what do you want to do to make things go better for you and for the family? So that's the action that you talk about.
Yes.
It's very important. It's not only the talking and the love. Yes, you're right. Yeah.
Now, I propose that we listen to Willy and Lut, whom we heard in the beginning of the podcast tell about how Lieve passed away and how that was the start of the open heart circles. I propose that we listen a little bit to where it began for them when Lieve, when they felt that Lieve was really in trouble and the troubles that she went to. Shall we listen a bit?
Okay, perfect. Yes.
Lieve is onze jongste dochter. Dat was een hele enthousiaste.
Lieve was our youngest daughter. She was always full of life and so creative. But from the age of 14, 15, she went through difficulties in life. It was difficult for her to make friends, finding out what her real capacities were. And more specifically, after completing her secondary school. After a lot of hesitation, she finally decided to study social work, a study that she did not complete. At some point she met somebody, a young man in the neighborhood of Leuven. She fell madly in love with him. She then moved to Leuven, although she didn't have an income, she had no job. But one sad day her friend called us and told us that our daughter was very confused. We drove to Leuven and we immediately consulted our family doctor.
De huisdokter zei, ja, dat is niet meer voor mij. Lieve lag in de zetel, was verward.
The family doctor then said there was very little he could do. Our daughter lied on the couch. She was very confused. We then consulted a psychiatrist, and that was our very first encounter with the psychiatric world. I would almost say a torture, because we saw very little progress. She went in and out of psychiatric clinics, and the existential questions she had, like, why am I here? What am I doing in this world? Why does all of this happen to me? This question was avoided, and we as parents were completely set aside.
Uw dochter eigenlijk echt van u afgenomen, hè? En je kunt er niet meer bij, hè?
At some point your daughter is being taken away from you and there is no way you can get to her. They forcibly made her take a lot of medication on which she reacted very badly. And at one point she said, listen, I think it's better if I ask for an admission into a psychiatric hospital.
Op dat moment vrijwillig binnengegaan.
So this admission was on her own free will. She asked to be admitted, and when we arrived at the clinic, the first thing she had to do, she had to give her mobile phone. And her reaction was, no, I want to keep my cell phone. But they said, no, if you come into this clinic, you have to give up your phone. The next day, when we called, we couldn't talk to her. Nobody wanted to provide information. No social assistant, no psychiatrist, no nurse, nobody. And since we persevered, after many phones, we finally found out that she was colocized and that she had been isolated, meaning that they put her in the isolation cell. All right, and can we see her? No, was the answer. Then on Thursday, a phone call came in from a social assistant, and by coincidence we managed to get Lieve on the phone for just a while. But then we heard the voice of a nurse saying, "Come on, Lieve, we're going to tie you up again."
We gaan u terug fixeren.
And we looked at each other and said, "What? Is our daughter being tied up?"
Men heeft ze manu militari vastgebonden in een isolatiekamer.
They fixated our daughter manu militari in the isolation cell. And this had been happening an entire week, or at least several days, without informing the relatives. And then on Saturday, we were allowed to see her. They led her into the room. She was wearing a pajama that was not hers, that was far too big for her. 10 minutes, and that was all they gave us. And then the next week on Tuesday, she had to appear in court. We contacted her lawyer, and she said, "Well, I'm sorry, but there is no way that I can make you see your daughter before appearing in court." And there we sit in court. I see my daughter. She waved at us. She stood up. She walked towards us. And she was still wearing that too large pajama that was not hers. No socks, no shoes, barefooted. Her hair was not even brushed. Lieve was a beautiful young lady, proud of the way she looked. But this is how they made her appear in court.
Dus die behandeling totaal ontdaan van een liefdevolle...
So in this psychiatric treatment, there was absolutely no place for any human or loving approach. An approach saying, "I will take care of you. I will make that your hair is brushed. I will put shoes on your feet." That was the reason that we, as parents, said, this has to stop. Because it's not just us, there are probably thousands of people, young people and parents that are in the same situation, people that have no voice. We who are still articulate, my wife who was chairman of youth welfare, and I who was responsible for a youth institution. We who can stand up for our right, who thought we knew the way, but these ways were blocked. What could that possibly mean for all these people who are not as articulate as we? And that's only one example, but we found out there are many examples, all leading to the same conclusion, and that conclusion is that for the family members, the door towards the psychiatric institution is closed.
Als familie is de deur letterlijk dicht.
So, Dimi, when we have heard Willy and Lut, I would like to ask you: could you imagine, or could we imagine that those people, Willy and Lut, that open heart circles would have existed at that time, and that they would come for an open heart circle? Could you imagine that? How would that be?
I think I can imagine that. So your question would really be like, okay, I get a phone call from Lut asking our daughter has been collocated, we cannot see her, she is put away and we are put aside, and can you help us?
That's a beautiful reframing. That's the question I meant.
And I would say our door is open, come. It would be a challenge to find a way to do an open heart circle with Lieve because she is locked away. And in my own experience, in the 4 or 5 years that I now do open heart circles, I never had to fight the authority of a clinic to be able to talk to the young person in question. Did you?
Fight the authority, no. When we had questions like that, we always found a way to could be able to talk to that person. So I don't have experience with situations where we could not talk to that person.
Because what is so touching in the story of Willy and Lut, that Willy says that he was, in youth care, he was people in Switzerland and in France and in Germany who are listening to the podcast, they don't realize how important Willy was. He was really a big guy in youth care. And Lut also, the job that she had was quite important. So if they couldn't get in touch with their own daughter that was locked away, I'm trying to imagine if I, as a social welfare and worker and facilitator of open heart circles, could get through these walls to make it possible that they see their daughter and talk to their daughter. But that I would feel that as an enormous challenge, and I would not sleep until I at least get to speak to Lieve and make it possible that she speaks to her parents. No?
Yes, I understand. Yeah.
I would have sleepless nights of that.
And imagine, Dimi, that you could realize that there could be a conversation, a circle with Lieve and her parents and her sisters and brother. I don't know, she had a brother also, with the family, let's say. Imagine, and then you know that in fact Lieve, she really doesn't want to live in this world. And then you have the parents. How would it be for you to, how would you do it to talk about that?
Well,
with a person who doesn't want to live and with parents?
Well, we spoke about the L word, that it's almost taboo. The D word is also taboo, death. We talk about life, we facilitate life. And the D word is we go out of the way of that. And in open heart circles, I make sure that we talk about death. Do you?
Yes, absolutely. And that's also why I think that Willy and Lut, even if the open heart circles didn't exist, in fact they did it in their life because they created the possibility for their daughter to ask that kind of question, to ask permission to step out of life, and they answered to that question. That's something that could happen in an open heart circle, to talk about that kind of themes.
Yes.
And that's so touching also in their story, because they, on the one side, they say, we missed open heart circles and we're excluded as a family. And at the same time, they really did courageous things themselves to talk about the D word, like you say.
Yes, yes. Whether suicide is a way out of problems, I don't know. But preventing people to do it and preventing the dialogue about it is something counterproductive. I feel it's so counterproductive. And so in an open heart circle, if people are turning around the pot, don't want to see the elephant in the room, well, I take the carpet away and there that stands.
I follow you completely. And I also think that it's a matter of, and that's something I learned from Willy and Lut. They really taught me everything that's there is welcome. So the wish to die, the wish not to live anymore is welcome. But also the wish that you stay alive, that your daughter stays alive, for instance, is also welcome. So everything can exist. And we create the right for every feeling and every view to be evenwaardig.
Yeah, at the same level.
Yes. And sometimes we really ask at families, sometimes we really ask at the child, may your parent feel like I want you to stay alive. Yes. And we ask the parent, may your child feel like I don't want to live anymore. Yes. And that's really important, that it can exist next to each other.
Yes, yes. Without facilitating the deed or without facilitating any outcome, that's why it's an open heart circle.
Yes.
Okay, it's a heart circle because you speak from the heart, but it's open because the outcome is open.
Yes. And also we know that by talking about these things, it connects you to life again. Also,
Yes.
that's really what happens.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember this family saying, we've been avoiding this conversation for 12 years.
I can imagine.
And for the first time we feel like we've said something that really
I
matters.
follow you. I recognize it. I was thinking about other things that really touch me that people say. Yeah, I think about children that say to their mom, for instance, finally I get to know something about how you feel. It's always about me and I must always tell how I feel, but you never tell how you feel. That's also something that happens a lot.
And of course you have the other side of the spectrum where parents always tell their children how they feel. That's what we call parentification. Children are fed up with hearing that.
Absolutely. And I think in the example that you give of that parent who really talks all the time about their feelings, I think we often notice that for those parents, it's really important to hear what their child has to say in the circle.
Yes.
And they're really often very amazed when they hear the feelings of their child, when they hear the pain of their child. It's interesting to elaborate a bit about the mirror, because it's really amazing how the mirror always can help to go deeper when you feel that it stays
superficial.
Yes.
Yes. So once again, so there are two facilitators, one who facilitates the dialogue and the other one's the mirror.
I think the importance for the mirror is not to analyze, to get out of the head and really to feel what happens. That's very important. And every time when a mirror can do that and can tell what happens, what he feels, then almost all the time the family or somebody in the family tells afterwards, that's right, that's it exactly. And it helps to deepen the conversation.
And sometimes
it's a very important role.
And sometimes when the mirror says something, sometimes I'm also amazed, like, how does that person feel this?
Really, yes, that happens.
And then I see recognition with the family, and the dialogue goes into a completely different level.
It's amazing to work with the mirror, to do that together. And that's also why it's important that you really get to know your partner with whom you do the circle, and that you have a short briefing before the circle, after the circle, to really
be able to connect.
Yes.
Yeah, and to feel each other, so that you know when to be silent and to give room for the mirror to act or to say something.
And you really have to trust your mirror.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because this is not something that we haven't said yet, but before meeting the family, before having them enter the room, we are there half an hour, even to 1 hour before, to make sure that the atmosphere in the room is okay. That's why we never do these circles in the homes of the families, because we want to create a safe space.
Yes, we prepared a room. I think as a duo, you say duo in English? The
Duo?
circle.
I think it's a duo.
Yeah. I hear that most of the people that do it, they get their own rituals as a duo. Some duos, they walk a block around before they go into the room. Some prepare the room together.
Yeah.
Some sit together in silence. It's all different, but you have to tune into each other also, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think we have reached a point where I don't think everything has been said about the open heart circles, but we lifted a tip of the veil, I think. Do you think of things, Siska, that we haven't said yet? I mean, our audience in England, America, Switzerland, Germany, they do not know the open heart circles. Have we explained enough?
Maybe we could say very shortly also that you have to start with the opening question, you have the middle piece where you talk about all the things that we've talked about, and then you have the
closing,
the closure of the circle. That's also, you always have those three phases.
Yes.
So I think maybe we could do the closure here, like we would do it in a circle.
Yes, yes.
We always have a question like, with what feeling do you step out of the circle? With what feeling do you leave this room? So maybe we can do the same here. And then I think we have the full circle.
So, yeah, you can ask me the question.
So, yes, Dimi, how do you feel at the end? With what feeling will you leave this room after our conversation?
I'm very thankful that you are here, Siska, because you were uncertain about your English. And I must give you a huge compliment because your English is better than mine. And I also feel that you talk about something that you know very well and that you live and that you believe in. I want to thank you very much for coming to Leuven. And to be here live with you is like a big gift. So thank you for this gift. And may I ask you, what is the feeling that you have, the overall thought that after this conversation?
First feeling is relief because it's ended. Because I was so nervous to do this. That's the first feeling. And then there's also gratitude. I would also like to thank you because you really made me feel at ease. You know what you're doing and you take people in it like it goes in a flow. So thank you for doing it this way.
And let's not forget to thank Willy and Lut, who made it possible for us to do this work and who are giraffe heroes or guardians of humanity. I will nominate you.
I think maybe we should also thank all the people that are doing open heart circles in Belgium and in Switzerland. You can cut this if you want, but we have people in Switzerland that do open heart circles.
Oh, really? Okay. Why would I cut it?
I don't know.
Is that Celine?
Yes.
Yes, I know her. She's been my colleague.
Voilà, she's great and she works in Switzerland.
Yes,
Voilà.
okay. Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. You have been listening to another podcast to restore your faith in humanity, the podcast inviting guardians of humanity. With us today was Siska Baart talking about Willy Vandamme and Lut Wouters. Be on the lookout for our next podcast. It should be online within a month or so. Thank you for listening. Very glad you were there, and I hope we find each other again soon.